Hello, good afternoon. I'm Miss Carla. I was just watching the governor's address, Governor Raimondo. As you know, I'm in Rhode Island, and she was talking a lot about the app, and people had a lot of questions about the app. It's called Crush COVID RI. And I hadn't heard much about it, but she was very insistent that this can be very helpful for us. And I think it makes a lot of sense, especially for people who are moving around more than others, going to stores, going out and about for various reasons, who are going back to work. Um, Basically, it sounds like it just tracks you, your location. So it makes a diary of where you've been. And she said it only records an address if you stay there for, I think, 10 minutes or more. So like as you're walking, it doesn't, or driving, I don't think it gives you your whole path. Um, but it records a location if you stop. And this is, of course, if you give it permission to turn on your location and record these things. And it records it on your phone, and it does not share it unless you say, oh, I have a reason to share. Let me turn that on and share it with the Department of Health, which would only be if you got symptoms or were, diagnosed, were tested positive and wanted to submit your information so that the Department of Health could track COVID. So I just thought that was really interesting, and I just went ahead and downloaded it on my phone. Wow, that's really bright, but you can kind of see it. And interesting to note, when I downloaded it and went through the permissions and everything, it didn't even ask me my name or anything. So it doesn't seem like it's any kind of social app. So it's not going to communicate with other people's accounts because there isn't really an account. All it seems to be doing is recording directly to my phone. And I imagine that if I want to submit the information, I'll have to identify myself at that point. But there's a button here for the location diary. Right now, does it say? Yep, you can delete it. It deletes automatically after 20 days, every address. Oh, and then it brings up the map and it just shows where I am, which you can't see, which is probably for the best. Let's just say I'm in the Mount Pleasant area. So you can see a little map. So I'm assuming if I go places, there'll be dots around that show where I've been. I'll be going to the store today, so I'm going to see what it says then. There's a button for symptom checker, a button for get tested. Gives you CVS rapid testing sites, information for Central Falls and Pawtucket residents. There's a button for those who are uninsured. There's a self checker, which I assume is like a symptom checker. There's a button called Get Help. There seems to be a little bit of a glitch here because there's two more buttons at the bottom that I can't see because it won't scroll up all the way. But for the Get Help button, it's delivery services for while you're in quarantine or isolation, a safe place to stay, behavioral and mental health support for adults, and then one for kids, employment support, support for veterans or active military personnel, health insurance, information about schools and childcare, resources for undocumented immigrants, support for older adults and adults living with disabilities. So this all sounds super helpful, and I imagine that most of this information is the same information that we find on the website when we go to look at that, which I've done once or twice, but this is easier for me as a cell phone user, a smartphone user, to kind of get a quick, push the button just to see what you want to see and not have to scroll through pages and pages of information. So this is pretty cool. I just wanted to put that out there because the governor was pretty excited about the number of people who've downloaded the app so far. It's very new, obviously, and they're still working out the kinks. And I thought, well, I didn't do it yet, so I might as well. And this is another one of those things. It's sort of a thing that seems small, simple, like wearing a mask, like coughing into your elbow, washing your hands regularly, staying away from, 6 feet away from people when you're out and about. Things that seem small but are actually us contributing to the health of our entire society. So, yeah, I would give it a shot. I know some people are concerned about privacy. Some people aren't comfortable using smartphones. I'm not a person who's particularly concerned about privacy. I use so many apps. I just sort of, I don't think about it too much, to be honest. I do, keep uh, keep my passwords and stuff safe. But as far as like social apps and things, I'm pretty much all out there. So for me, it's not that big of a concern. But if you are one of those people who doesn't like to be on social media, this is not a social app. It's not, you don't see anybody else's information. You don't even put your own information in. Like I said, it didn't ask for my name or age or anything. All it said was, can we turn on location? And I could have said no, and I could have turned it on at a later time when I wanted to use it. And yeah, it didn't ask anything else. It didn't ask about permission for contacts in my phone or to link to any other apps. The only thing it asked to do was use the location. So I think it's worth a shot. I encourage you to try and do what you can to help all of us keep the virus under control. I don't like to talk about the virus too much on these videos because, we're trying to have a good time and it can be a bit of a downer, but I think it's a good thing, especially when we're talking about ways that we can help each other. That's always a good thing, to help each other. All right, we're going to continue with City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. And we'll see. We are on chapter 22, page 218. And like I said last time, there are 285 pages total, so that's less than 70 pages. So if we read 35 pages today, then I'm going to say tomorrow will be our last day, which Friday's a good day to end a book on. I think we can start a new book next week. And yeah, so let's get started. Chapter 22. I know it sounds crazy, I say, explaining the pull I feel as we make our way through the ghostly city. Jacob shrugs. It's not the weirdest thing that's happened today. I laugh, a small, frantic sound. He knocks my shoulder. The veil ebbs and flows around us, buildings going up and coming down, ghosts flickering past. I should have listened to my limbs when they told me I was going the wrong way. Now I let them lead me. I don't ignore the tug, the voice in my bones that says go this way or that. My feet carry me, and with every step, the line between me and Lara tightens and tightens and tightens until it starts to go slack. I slam to a stop. Thinking I've gone the wrong way, I backtrack several feet until the tension returns. I try again, but no matter where I go from here, the line slackens. This, right here, is where I'm supposed to be. The problem is, right here isn't anywhere. The veil is empty, except for smudges of streets and the smoky outlines of places that don't exist on this side of the curtain. It's like one of those paintings where the artist leaves the sketch lines at the edges. This is an edge, a spot where the veil and the regular world don't line up. I squint, trying to make out the other side, but it's getting harder to see anything beyond the curtain. When I try, everything's out of focus and focus. That gives me an idea. My camera is still hanging around my neck. It may be a weird camera, one that sees a little less and a little more. But all cameras allow you to adjust for different focal lengths, so you can focus on things that are up close or things that are far away, like the veil and the regular world. I lift the cracked viewfinder to my eye, turning the lens until the veil in front of me blurs. For a second, the whole picture is out of focus, but I keep turning the lens until the veil becomes a haze and the real world beyond comes into sharp relief. If we were in the real world right now, we'd be standing inside a bookstore. Blackwell's, reads a sign on the wall in white and blue paint. Follow me, I tell Jacob. He keeps a hand on my shoulder, and I keep my eye to the viewfinder as we weave through a maze of customers and bookshelves. Down, says the tug in my chest, and I take the stairs, moving through a world I can see but not touch, passing through people as if they're not even there, when really, I'm the one who's missing. We reach the bottom floor, and there she is, in a corner of the bookstore cafe. She's sitting at a small round table, stirring a cup of tea and reading a book. Laura, I shout, hoping her senses are more tuned than mine. She glances up, and my hopes soar for a second before she looks back at her book. Laura, please! A slight crease forms between her eyes, but that's it. I reach out and push her as hard as I can, or at least I try. My hand hits the veil, and it feels more like glass than fabric. The glass trembles but doesn't bend or break. Laura gets to her feet, shuts the book, and starts to leave. No! I follow her out of the cafe, Jacob on my heels. Laura, 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 he calls as she rounds the corner into an empty aisle, promptly spins on one heel, and steps smoothly through the veil. What? She hisses. I let my camera fall back on its strap. The bookstore shimmers like the afterimage of a flash, bright and gone, bright and gone. But Laura is there, real. So you did hear us, says Jacob. Yes, I heard you, ghost, she snaps. My name, he shoots back, is Jacob. I don't have time for any of this. Laura, I say, we have a problem. Her attention finally shifts my way, a smart reply already forming on her lips, but at the sight of me, gray and faded and lightless, she stops. For the first time since we met, Laura looks truly surprised. I didn't think it was possible to faze her, and I'm not sure if it makes me proud or terrified. Cassidy, she murmurs. I thought my current state might merit some concern, but I'm still caught off guard when the next words out of her mouth are, What have you done? I didn't do anything, I counter. I warned you, says Laura, hands on her hips. I told you to stay away from the Raven, and you, she turns on Jacob, I told you to protect her. Back to me. I left you alone for an hour, and you go and lose your thread? You're really not helping, I say, fighting to keep the panic from my voice. What were you thinking? She continues. Where was your camera? I duck my head. The cap was on. Laura throws up both hands. That's just great, Cassidy, she sighs, pinching the bridge of her nose. How did you even find me? I don't know, I say. I just kind of knew, like there was a rope running between us. Laura nods, her eyes narrow in what I'm coming to recognize as her thinking face. It makes sense that we'd be drawn together. After all, like calls to like. I've felt it too, but I didn't realize it had a use. Not to interrupt your brainstorming, says Jacob, but Cass is currently a ghost. It's the first time I've heard the words out loud. It turns my stomach. Don't be dramatic, Laura says. You're just stuck in the veil, she tells me. Your life thread has been stolen. We need to steal it back. Tell me exactly what happened. So I do. I tell her about the castle, the creepy children, the raven in red, and the way she stole my life. Laura listens to the whole story in silence, arms crossed and eyes cast upward. She stays that way, even after I've finished. Say something, I plead as an uncomfortable silence settles over us. I'm thinking. Think faster, says Jacob. All of a sudden, a shiver rolls through me, and for an instant, my lungs ache and the world dims, and I feel so cold I can't imagine ever being warm again. Cass, says Jacob, his eyes wide with worry. What was that? I don't know, I whisper, trying to keep the tremble from my voice. But when I look down at my hands, they seem grayer. You really don't look good, says Laura, which is a totally unhelpful comment. Her own warm light shines brightly through her shirt. I want my life back, I say through chattering teeth. Laura bites her lip. All right, do you want the good news or the bad? I could really use some good news right now. The good news is the Raven doesn't own your life yet. It's still yours. She's just borrowing it. And the bad news? I ask. Laura hesitates. The bad news is what she's going to do with it. I don't even want to ask, but I don't have a choice. What? Well, says Lara, she has to dig up her own body and put your life inside it. I guess that's another piece of good news. It does take time to dig up a body, but we have until she manages that. But I guess that's also the bad news. Once she places your life thread inside her body, well, there's no untying that knot. Lara looks down at her watch. There are 5 historical graveyards in Edinburgh, and it's safe to assume she'll go to one of them. I'm so caught up in the good news, bad news seesaw that it takes me a moment to remember I know that answer. Findlay already told me. She's buried in Greyfriars. Lara brightens. Well, that's a step in the right direction. Greyfriars is not far from here. Let's go. Lara turns, but I catch her arm. Wait, you can't come with us. You need me there. And she's right. I know, but I need you to do something else first. What could possibly be more important? You have to find my parents. Lara blanches. What? They're up at the castle, or at least they were. Look for the filming crew in Findlay and what exactly am I supposed to tell them? Snaps Lara. That their daughter got snatched up by some creepy Scottish legend. I pause for a second, wondering if Mom and Dad would actually believe that. But their interest in the supernatural only goes so far. Just tell them I'm okay. I'm not big on lying. Make an exception, please. Lara shakes her head, but says, Fine. I throw my arms around her. Lara goes stiff, then gives my back a small pat. I try not to think about how different she feels compared to me, how much more solid and real. I'll tell them something, she says, pulling away, and then I'll meet you at Greyfriars. She turns to go, one hand lifted to the veil. But before she parts the curtain, she looks back. Cassidy. Yes? We're going to fix this, she says. And then the curtain ripples, and she's gone. Chapter 23. There's no sun in the vale, only a wan gray glow, but the sky somehow darkens around us as Jacob and I head for Greyfriars Kirk, as if someone's cast a shadow over everything. Fog slips through the streets, and the presence of ghosts feels suddenly menacing. I grip the camera in both hands, cap off and lens ready in case of trouble. I don't suppose we have a plan, says Jacob. Sure, I say, trying to sound hopeful. The plan is to stop the Raven in Red and get my life back. I hate to point this out, but neither one of us has a physical form. I know, and the Raven is on the other side of the veil. I know, and we can't. I know, I snap. Jacob cringes. I take a deep breath. Look, I saw her back at the castle after she crossed over. And she was beyond the veil, but I could still see her without even trying. Jacob frowns. What do you think that means? I don't know for sure, I admit, but I think it means she's like me now. Jacob starts to protest, but I hold up my hand. I mean, I think she has one foot on either side. I think a part of her is still tied to the veil. I'm hoping that means there's a way for us to pull her back. I don't have to read Jacob's mind to know what he's thinking. The same fear is rattling around inside my head. What if we can't? But he's kind enough not to say it out loud. One step at a time, I think. First, we have to get to the graveyard. Into your homes, calls a voice. I turn around to see a group of hooded figures wearing monstrous masks, bird-like faces with long beaks. They are clutching lanterns, but smoke pours out instead of light. Guard yourselves against sickness, says one. Be vigilant. Aren't you a pretty thing, coos an old woman with no teeth. She holds a bouquet of rotting flowers toward me. Puppy for the lass? Come here, come here. I back away and nearly clip a soldier. A bunch of them huddle against the walls. The wall, collars turned up as if against a biting wind. I can't feel a thing, but they shiver, breaths fogging the air. Their eyes slide toward me, and I murmur my apologies as Jacob and I hurry on. If I were a good ghost hunter, I'd stop and reap these people. Then again, if I were a good ghost hunter, I probably wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. I paint the map in my head to keep my nerves calm. We're almost to Greyfriars. We just have to get across the street and down the old cobblestone road, and then a hand comes out of nowhere, bony, dirt-stained fingers clawing at my wrist. The hand belongs to a man in a prison cart. His face slips into a broken smile, a grimace. "Get me out, lass." "Let her go," orders Jacob, pulling at the prisoner's arm. But the grimy fingers only tighten on my skin. "Get me out or I'll break your—" I don't think. I bring the camera up, shoving it toward his face. His eyes cut toward the lens, and he lets go so fast that I lose my balance and stumble backward. Jacob catches me, but the camera strap comes loose, and the camera itself tumbles to the ground. My whole body clenches, afraid that it will break, but it lands on its back, lens up. I duck under the prisoner's hands and crouch to grab it. I don't mean to look at the lens, or rather, I don't think about not looking. But the moment I see my reflection in the silvered glass, my mind goes blank, and then I'm in the river again, lungs filling with icy water, and this time, no one saves me. This time, I don't come up for air. This time, the light gets farther away, and I keep sinking down, 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 until my vision goes black. And it takes me a second to realize it's not an absolute darkness, but Jacob's hands over my eyes, his voice in my ear. "You're alive, you're alive, you're alive." I shudder back to myself. I'm kneeling in the street, cobblestones digging into my shins and chest heaving. But I'm here, real, alive, or as close as I can get right now. "Thanks," I say. My voice wavers. Jacob pretends not to notice. "Rule number 33, he says with a smile. "Friends don't let friends get trapped in reflections?" That's the one. I know he's trying to make me smile, but all that comes to mind is the horrible cold I felt, the knowledge of how that day could have ended, should have ended, did end. "Stop," says Jacob firmly, reading my mind. "It didn't, and it won't. Not like that. Not like this. Now come on, we're almost there." He's right. The entrance to Greyfriars is right ahead, around the bend and down a sloping road. I take up the camera and loop the purple strap over my head, careful to keep the lens pointing away from me. No wonder Jacob always averted his gaze, never looked right into the lens. We round the corner and start down the road. The iron of Greyfriars gates comes into sight, and there, in front of the metal bars, a boy and a girl stand waiting. The girl is tall and blonde, in jeans and a sweatshirt and a Slytherin scarf. She looks like she could have walked straight out of the Elephant House. But the boy is from a different time. He has black hair and sad eyes, and looks like something out of a painting a long ago past. They're so different, and yet they've got the same blank expressions on their faces, the same frost crawling over their skin. My steps slow, so do Jacob's. "Maybe they just want to talk," he says. "Maybe," I say, but I'm not feeling hopeful. The girl straightens and stares. The boy pushes off the iron gates and draws his hands out of his pockets, moving toward us, and I realize I've seen him before, in a yellowing photo in the hand of an old man in a freezing house. "If you see my boy—" "Hi, Matthew," I say as we get closer, but he doesn't blink, doesn't seem to register the name. Have you ever heard that saying, "There's nobody home"? That's what it's like, the two of them staring at us with empty eyes. "Is there some kind of password?" asks Jacob. "Like open sesame?" Beyond the gates, I can hear the sound of shovels striking earth, but when I try to step around the boy, he shifts, quick as light, blocking my way. My fingers tighten on the camera. "I'm sorry," I say, raising it in front of the boy's face. He stares vacantly into the lens. Watch and listen, I start. The boy cocks his head. See and know. A single slow blink. This is what you are. He makes no motion as I reach into his chest, ready to take hold of his thread. My fingers close around nothing. No ribbon, no rope, just empty space. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe his hand shoots out and wraps around my throat. It happens so fast. Suddenly he's shoving me back against a stone wall. I took a self-defense course once, one of those after-school workshops that was mostly common sense. Don't talk to strangers, avoid adults in vans offering candy or puppies. But toward the end, they taught us how to break free of someone's grip. Not that I can remember the instructions right now. Luckily, I don't have to. Jacob tackles the boy, and the two of them go down in the street. I stagger, drawing deep lungfuls of air as the girl surges toward me. I duck under her arms and haul Jacob to his feet. And we do the only thing we can. We run. Chapter 24. Plan? Asked Jacob as we race down the road past Greyfriars. I'm working on it, I answer breathlessly. My camera bobs around my neck. It should have worked. Why didn't it work? Something's wrong with them, I say. You mean besides the fact they're chasing us? Asks Jacob. We hit the base of the road and skid to a stop. Oh no. When I was on the other side of the veil, I could feel the weight of it, the pressure warning me when places were haunted, when ghosts were close. But from this side, I can't feel anything, which is why I didn't realize where we were going until we're already there. Grassmarket. On the other side of the veil, Grassmarket was a bustling square full of tourists and pubs, open air, and history. Here, it's still exactly what it used to be, an execution ground. The place where hundreds of men and women met their ends. The square is packed with ghosts, huddled around a wooden stand. Detour, whispers Jacob, but I can hear the boy and the girl running behind us, and there's nowhere else to go. No way out, but through. I take Jacob's hand, and we force our way into the dense crowd as a man is led onto the platform. A coarse rope is cinched around his neck. I turn away, burying my face in Jacob's shoulder because there are some things you never need to see. But the execution doesn't come. The voices in the crowd trail off into an eerie silence. And when I look up, I see 100 faces. The mob isn't looking at the man on the stand. They're looking at us. A woman shuffles toward me. The raven came this way. A man jostles her. She said she'd set us free. A child skips and twirls. All we had to do, an old woman grabs at my sleeve, was get a hold of you. I yelp and hold up my camera like a shield, and the old woman staggers back as if struck. Jacob takes my arm and pulls me toward the end of the square. We can't outrun them, I say. We don't have to, he says. And he's right. We might be stuck here in the veil, but we're not stuck here. Not bound to any one place, any one loop in time and memory. All we have to do is reach the edge of Grassmarket. Hands grab at us as we duck and twist through the crowd. A man collars Jacob, but I twist my friend free, camera raised, and we keep running as hard as we can. The air at the edge of Grassmarket shimmers up ahead as the mob of ghosts closes in behind and around us. I feel fingers brush my neck, trying to snag the camera strap. But the instant before they close, we veer left out of the square and onto a narrow road. Then Grassmarket vanishes behind us, like a door slamming shut. The mob of ghosts, the hungry crowd, their cries and shouts are swallowed up by a fold in the veil. Jacob doubles over, gasping, and I slump against the wall, breathless and shaking. The feeling of cold is getting worse. I don't tell Jacob, but he can see it on my face, read it on my panicked thoughts. My hands, when I look at them, are colorless. I'm running out of time. I crane my head, straining to see over the rooftops until I find it, the dark gray stone of the graveyard wall. Come on, I say, dragging Jacob after me. The wall flashes behind and between houses, and I keep it in my sights as we move because the last thing I need right now, with the raven so close and time running out, is to get lost. We've carved a large circle, and we're on a narrow road that runs along the graveyard wall, almost back to the gate. When I see the boy with the sad eyes, Matthew, at the mouth of the lane, a smaller child stands beside him. Jacob skids to a stop and turns, only to find the modern-day blonde girl with 2 more ghosts at her back. Plan? He asks again, his voice edging higher with worry. I'm working on it, I say, backing up until my shoulder hits the stone of the graveyard wall. I don't know what the children want, but it doesn't involve talking. They don't make any sound at all, not a whisper or a giggle or a grunt. You don't think about how unnerving silence is until it's everywhere. The circle of ghosts tightens like a knot. I don't want to find out what happens when they close the last of the gap between us. Stay back, orders Jacob. When the ghosts keep coming, he shoots me a nervous look. It was worth a try. I press back into the wall. There's nowhere to go. We're so close, so close. I can hear the shovels hitting earth on the other side of the wall. The children close in, opening their mouths, and instead of different voices coming out, there's only one, the raven's. Her eerie, hypnotic song pours from their lips. The notes fill the air. Jacob's hand closes over mine. I'll try to distract them, he says. You run. No, I say automatically, because I can't stomach the thought of going at this alone, of being stuck in the veil or facing the raven without my best friend. We're in this together. Jacob cracks a smile. Whew, he says, I'm glad you said that. I'm really not up for noble sacrifices. But he looks at the circle of ghosts. What do we do now? I let my gaze drift up, taking in the wall. Its rough rocks, the ivy streaming down in patches like ropes. I have an idea. It is, admittedly, a bad idea. I wrap my hands around the camera. Plan, I say firmly. When the flash goes off, we start climbing. Jacob groans. I'm really not a fan of heights. Time to face your fear, I whisper. Ready, set, I hit the button. The camera flash goes off, and for one dazed second, the ghosts jerk backwards. Their singing drops away. In that second, we climb. I scramble up several feet before my shoe slips. I catch myself on a weedy vine, the rocks scraping my knuckles and shins. I manage to hook my foot into the groove of a missing stone and keep climbing up the rough wall. I don't look down, not until I reach the top. I swing my leg over the side and glance back. Jacob is right behind me. He starts to smile and then slips, begins to fall. I lunge, catching his hand, and haul him up onto the stone lip beside me. See? I say, breathless. That wasn't so hard. Down on the street, the children stare at us, unfazed, and then start walking up the road. Maybe they gave up, says Jacob hopefully. Maybe, I think. Or maybe they're looking for another way in. Either way, I don't have time. I turn my back on them on the rippling city and look to the graveyard. Greyfriars stretches out beneath us, waiting. Church bells toll on the air, slow and sad. I scan the sloping lawn, cluttered with tombstones, trying to spot the raven. Mist is twining through the graves, and the light is slipping low, and I can't see her from here. I can't see her, but I know she's there. I can feel the pull of my missing thread, as if its end were still embedded in my chest. I am a compass, and the raven is in red is my new north. Another shiver passes through me, a full-body wash of cold that steals the air from my lungs and leaves me struggling for balance. Jacob steadies me, and I focus on the pressure of his grip as I slowly straighten to my feet. Jacob lets go then, preferring to stay on his hands and knees. It's a perfectly rational thing to be afraid of heights, he answers defensively, and far too loudly. His voice echoes through the dusk, and he clasps his hand over his mouth. We don't have many advantages right now. Surprise is kind of essential. Shovels sound somewhere beyond the church, and through the fog I can just make out a small halo of bluish light. My light. It's time to get it back. I look around and see a tall tombstone nearby, leaning up against the wall. The grave marker is a stone block with a sculpture in it, angel wings jutting out from either side and a face emerging from the stone, as if coming up for air. I try not to look at the angel's lidded eyes or its open mouth as I shimmy down from the wall onto the nearest stone wing, then from the wing onto a single outstretched hand. I jump. There's a short fall, and then my feet sink into loamy earth, thick and damp and freshly turned. Jacob lands beside me a second later and topples forward, sinking in nearly to his elbows. He groans, pulling himself free. I get to my feet and look around, and as I do, something happens. The veil shimmers around us, and the graveyard shifts, the whole world blurring for one long second before stuttering back, sharp and fresh and painfully familiar. This isn't the Greyfriars I saw the other day, the one with the ghost dog running between tombstones and the man smoking at the top of the hill. No, this is the Greyfriars of right now. The veil and the world beyond line up for the first time, two images stacked and shifted until they come into perfect focus. The only thing that lingers is the bad feeling, like fingers down my spine. I don't get it, says Jacob, but I do. Each and every ghost creates their own veil, paints their memory on a blank canvas, and this is my version. If I fail to get my life back, if I die, really die, this is what my afterlife will look like. I'll be stuck wandering this graveyard, watching the raven dig herself up, plant my life in her own bones. But I'm not giving up. I'm not dying here. I'm not dying at all. That's the end of that chapter. So we made it to page 248. And 84 minus 48 is 36. So yeah, we will finish this tomorrow. We'll be starting with chapter 25. Oh, it's getting exciting. I mean, it's been exciting for a little while, but now we got to see how it ends. All right. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.